Today on the Idiot's Guide, we are talking about, in an epic battle of bests, who would win, Marvel or DC? And I'm sorry, but you can no longer go to hell, one hockey stick that is, on bus number 666 in Poland. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Prophet Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Here today, I think it's important that we address some, some underlying tension that's probably going to be very, very obvious as we go along in this conversation. Mainly for the sake that what we are unpacking, what we are dissecting is the true nature of, honestly, what helped us become the people we are as adults. I mean, like the fantastic ideas of these superhuman capabilities and beyond yourself, and the mysteries behind everything, and but then you have these, like, it's almost like two political parties here. You're like, well, I don't know, did you vote Marvel or did you vote DC? I can't even say the word vote for some reason, but I did a lot of research on this for about 3 minutes, and I found a whole lot of information that still continues to this day to be a very, very divided subject. However, there is some pretty clear when you talk about an epic battle of the bests, and finding out who the bests are in all of, let's say, Justice League, let's say Avengers, you really start seeing some of these characters that may potentially put up a good fight, a good fit, against each other. But at the end of the day, in the threads I was reading and looking through, there's a pretty common victor. And so I'm interested to see how we go about this, but I also want to mention that, like, it's not just about us arguing and arm wrestling about who's better than who, but honestly, we had a great discussion the other day that I want to bring back up, and that is about kind of the angle and direction of both of these, about how they have excelled, Marvel and DC, and their particular universes that they thrive in. How do they thrive best? Why do they thrive best? And then, in that kind of saying what we recommend, because Marvel and DC do listen to our recommendations on this podcast. But Joe, I've talked for a couple minutes here and gone on about, some anticipation about what we can look forward to in the podcast. But tell me, how would you put together an epic battle such as this?
Now, I do want to clarify that the research, I'm doing air quotes, the research that Adam did is extremely biased because he is definitely a DC guy.
I didn't go to any DC anything.
Wherever that research is, it's coming from a mindset of DC is better. I am a Marvel guy. Marvel to me is more realistic. Marvel is more grounded as you can be when talking about superheroes.
This is serious.
Now, okay. Now this argument doesn't just exist here in the office, but my wife is also a DC person.
Oh, see, there's some tension there.
There is.
All right.
Now,
that's not my fault, Joe.
She does enjoy certain Marvel characters, depending on the level of clothing that they wear in their movies.
Okay.
She loves Thor.
Sure.
Of course.
I mean, yeah.
But
I love... no, sorry. Never mind.
But she is definitely a DC fan and prefers the DC movies or the DC shows over the Marvel. I will take Marvel any day of the week.
Oh, man. I mean... This is going to be great.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited about this. All right. So one of the things that I mean, you're right. I have a bias about what I did, but I didn't do a bias in the sense like I even worded it so that it wasn't like Justice League first or DC Comics first in how I did my searches, but to try to get like Screen Rant is a good source that I was looking at, and they gave some really good information that helped my case, but also dismantled my case in the same process. It depends on how nerdy you want to go, because we could go into old canon and comic book numbers. I have a comic book number that references and helps your point of view there, Joe. However, I'm not going to shoot myself in the leg in the first quote that I say here. But, one of the things I wanted to bring up is, this isn't Marvel, but it's currently owned by the same giant, but the Star Wars empire, right? That whole thing, Mr. Luke Skywalker, he played by the infamous Mark Hamill, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see where this is going.
He was the voice for the Joker in Batman, the animated series from 1992. So, I mean, that was one of my favorite shows. I looked forward to that. I was still in school, obviously. I'm not that old, guys. Come on, And so I would get home from school and I would watch. I would look forward to the afternoons. Like, I don't even know what time. It's probably like 3:30 or 4. Batman came on, and it was all like dark and dingy and depressing. And come to find out, I was like, look, I was listening to Luke Skywalker. I mean, sorry, Mark Hamill, but he didn't know that he was going to be owned by Disney and in association with Marvel at that time. But what?
See, and here's the difference. I came home from school and I watched X-Men.
Okay.
Woke up on Saturday morning.
I watched X-Men. Okay.
So X-Men, I think it was X-Men Evolution when I was older, was the afternoon TV show. And then the X-Men was when I was a younger kid on the weekends.
I should have done the research. I wonder if Gargoyles is part of one of the universes. No?
Not related.
I mean, it's real dark
I'm
like a Batman.
I'm rewatching Gargoyles.
Oh, man.
And
what a great series.
It has a strong connection to Star Trek.
Really? That's strange.
Oh, nearly all of the characters on Gargoyles are voiced by actors from Star Trek. So
I believe that. Okay.
I think the only one that didn't do Gargoyles from the main Star Trek The Next Generation series was LeVar Burton.
We should have probably disclaimered that this is going to be probably one of the nerdiest episodes we ever do. Like, there's going to be some nerdy like science and some mathing. This one's legit.
This is kind of where we go from the idiot's guide to the loser's guide.
People like us, Joe. Come on.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, the superhero stuff is becoming a lot more popular. Mm-hmm. And just so everyone knows where this conversation came from, we were talking about the podcast and a few other things, and we started talking about a podcast that I've been watching recently, which is Talkville, and that's done by Michael Rosenbaum and now, of course, my mind's blanking. Tom Welling, who do, and you can't forget Ryan. He's the producer that sits in the room with them. But they do a rewatch of Smallville. Mm-hmm. And they've mentioned a couple times about how Smallville was really the start of what we're seeing today in this comic book superhero revolution.
And I think, I remember us talking about this and saying like, well, but what about the Adventures of Lois and Clark? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those I can't remember
with Dean
the
Cain.
Dean Cain, yeah. But that one was like already, Smallville's kind of like the what do you call that? The pre whatever it is before Adventures of Lois and Clark, and so it was something that Smallville kind of filled in all the questions about his, Superman's upbringing. And but I think, where we landed, you're right. That kind of catapulted Smallville catapulted the whole scene about how this character development would morph into what it is now. But I think that, what we both kind of agreed on is that MCU and DCU kind of took their own lanes.
Yeah.
What kind of, can you unpack a little bit about what that, like what we were talking about in that sense?
Yeah. And so when we're talking about, we joke around and we may come back to who would actually win, Hulk or Superman.
Oh, we will.
But when we're talking about the fight between DCU and MCU, there historically really isn't a lot of comparison, because you look at where each one of them is successful. And other than a few outliers, it's really consistent as to which one does well. And so talking about DC first, DC really did well with the original Superman movie. Mm-hmm. And it was it was great. It was, revolutionary for the time. Everyone loved it.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve was great as the hero. Everything about it was just really good for its time. But outside of that, DC never really had a good movie. And
I can agree.
Any movies that they did have really didn't succeed.
Well, you still had the Batman series that was for years and years, but you'd still go like some of them were good, others were not.
Yeah, and so you have, in the late 80s, early 90s, you had the Batman movies with, the nipples that everyone liked to joke about.
The nipples on his suit. I forgot about that.
Yes.
That's great.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, DC did this. What was it? Batman and Robin, I think, was the second one in that series, or the third one. I can't remember. But it was awful. It was panned by everyone. Even today, it's still a joke. Even today, the nipples are a joke. And
who was that? That one. So you had what? Was that George Clooney?
I think it was George Clooney with the nipples.
Because I was going to say, like, you had Michael Keaton, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then, anyway, Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
The nipples, guys, the nipples. No nipples on a suit. It just doesn't work.
But other than a few outliers, like that first Batman movie was successful. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't a runaway, it wasn't, in comparison, Iron Man of today.
Right.
It was a good movie, but it wasn't a massive success. And then each time they tried Batman 2, Batman 3, it got worse and worse with every one.
Yeah.
Now, comparison, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, well, maybe not Iron Man 3, but Iron Man 2, great movie, everyone loved it. And so you've got these comparisons of the movement of these sequels through the process. But DC never really had good movies. Mm-hmm. But they had really good TV shows. You had all the cartoons. You have all the Batman cartoons. You've got Batman and Robin with Adam West. These were really successful TV shows.
Yeah.
DC has always been successful with TV. I think there was a Wonder Woman.
Even bringing, there's Wonder Woman. Even bringing in like newer generation of TV shows. You're talking like CW really got a hold of it, Warner Brothers, mm-hmm. and they did a tremendous job bringing up all of these characters and developing them all into their own specific, shows. And honestly, like even doing crossover events with those shows because of how much like popularity each one was kind of holding in their own. So yeah. You're right. And TV shows, they really held it down.
And then you come up to Smallville. And that was extremely, extremely successful as a TV show.
Yeah.
And then take it to the other side and look at Marvel. Marvel tried TV shows. And this is why they got out of the game for a long time, because they had a Spider-Man show that did okay. It wasn't great, but it did okay. And then there was...
X-Men was cool, but it got weird at the end, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, X-Men's had a couple. X-Men's one of those weird ones. Like, it's in Marvel, it's not in Marvel.
Well, yeah,
It's-
like if we're gonna like we can stay true to like Justice League and Avengers, like
Yeah.
those. Then we're not talking these extra universal things that
Right.
are yeah.
And then you had the Hulk TV show,
Mm-hmm.
which universally panned. There were a lot of failures on the Marvel side with the TV shows.
Yeah.
But when it came to movies, extremely successful. I mean, we've got the MCU. The DCU is even following suit of the MCU.
Right.
And you even look at the movies today of DC, in my opinion, they don't hold a candle to the Marvel movies. They're okay, but they're not great. They're not stellar. And you look at Marvel trying to throw in some of these TV shows, and they're okay, but they're not stellar. Now, I do
Yeah.
have a theory as to why these work, why DC does so much better with TV and why Marvel does so much better with movies. And that is the fundamental idea of what the superheroes do in each of those properties.
Okay.
In the DC universe, also DC Arrow, all those,
Oh yeah,
the big
like
ones.
that's what I was saying.
Flash.
Like WB really picked it up, and you have Flash, you have Arrow, you have, then you have Daredevil, and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Within the DC Comics world, secret identities is massively important.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to have the secret identity.
Yes.
Whereas in Marvel, no one has a secret identity. Everyone knows who you are. Thor is Thor. There is no secret identity there. Iron Man, I am Iron Man.
Yeah.
Steve Rogers is Captain America. Captain America is Steve Rogers.
I think
Even
the
now-
only one that was a mystery, but they knocked it out was the Spider-Man stuff. And
Right.
so like that's one of those that's like, I to be honest, like I didn't know that Spider-Man was even Marvel back when I was collecting comics of Spider-Man. I don't know why I didn't notice. I could probably go back and look at some of the comics that I still have and be like, well, yeah, duh, that's Marvel. But I didn't think that.
The Spider-Man actually goes back to confirming some of the ideas behind this, in that Spider-Man had a good TV show
Yeah.
and not so good movies. I mean, some of them were okay, but really not that great. Some of the more recent ones are better. The first one was good. They've kind of had their issues since then of the modern Spider-Man movies. And so it really fits with the idea that Spider-Man having the secret identity makes a better TV show than it makes a movie. And I think some of the reason behind this is drama does well on TV. Drama doesn't do well on movies.
I think because you have to develop the character more. You have these other nuances besides this secret identity, and the secret's always there. And you're like, but you have the tension between the discovery of them. Like always somebody finds out their identity and they're willing to reveal this to the world. And they're like, but no. And they're captured and put away, and nobody believes them when they're shouting it from the prison cells, and all of this mystery. But then you have other things like relationship drama and dinner parties and whatever else. It's like just real life stuff. And then, they're also superheroes.
Yeah. And so you're developing essentially two different backstories, which takes longer.
Yeah.
And it's kind of boring. Backstories are boring.
Yes.
And to have to do two backstories in a short movie, which is essentially just the length of maybe 2 or 3 TV shows, and you have to do an entire backstory and the action, well, 2 backstories and the action and the story, it just doesn't make good movies. But it makes great TV shows, because then you can end on a cliffhanger. You can end on suspense to what's coming next. What's the next mystery? And you have this underlying idea of there's a mystery here that Will it be found out throughout the entire series? But a movie, you have to go quick. And not having a secret identity where you're just developing one backstory, one character, one personality, you're done, move on to the action.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking about the difference between Marvel and DCU and DC, where one does well and one doesn't, I think they both do really well if they stick to their lanes. And that's what we're seeing today. That's, as Marvel is trying to move to TV, it's not so good.
Yeah.
DC trying to move into movies, not so good. But when they're sticking to what works, it's great. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's a really good theory. I think in the sense that you can look at all of the different Marvel movies and all of the different TV shows that DC has put out, and you can see that the movie production on DC was meh, but also the TV production on Marvel is meh. So you have this. In my opinion, a solid theory in the sense of saying like, hey guys, stay in your lane. Like you guys are really good at this. I think maybe a mashup. Marvel would bring that to the movies, but mash it up on both ends. Have a mashup TV show. Have a mashup movie. And just probably tank both of them. But whatever, it's fine. You guys have billions to spend.
There you go.
The thing that I wanted to at least square up on is I have a list of a couple, like this is Justice League versus Avengers. Okay. And
Avengers all day, every day.
You might think like that I went to, I was like, look, can you, everything that favors Justice League, give me all that information. And no, I didn't, Joe. Don't accuse me of those sorts of things. But I did quite a few searches of Justice League versus Avengers. And so core players, that's all we're talking about here. And I have a handful of them. I don't include every single one of them, but these guys, I include at least the big guns. All right. So Batman versus Captain America.
See, that's just a bad combo.
Why?
Because the person that goes with Captain America is going to be Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. Okay. I'd be down with that.
Yeah.
But Wonder Woman just doesn't even have to lift a finger and still stomps
Captain
Captain America.
No way.
Captain America might be strong. He's still just human.
His cells regenerate. He is a super soldier. Wonder Woman doesn't have
She's a
magical
demigod.
powers.
Yes, she does. She can move and harness lightning.
Yeah, so can Captain America.
How? Because he can pick up the hammer every once in a while. Okay, all right, fair.
Plus, what is Wonder Woman's biggest secret weapon? The lasso of truth.
Okay.
What does, of any of the Avengers, who is the one that's never going to work on?
Captain America.
Exactly. Right there. That's the matchup. And Batman.
Yeah, but her strength alone, like.
Captain America is super strong. He's a super soldier.
So as you guys can see, we're going to be very divided on this and
All right.
probably never conclude.
Okay, and Batman's perfect matchup is Iron Man. There is no two rich guys.
Yeah, you're right. The billionaire tech guys like that. That's fair enough. Like in personality.
And honestly, between those two, Batman is an idiot.
Oh, man.
Okay. He's got people who make his tech for him.
Okay.
Iron Man makes his own tech.
Yeah, but
so
like
in the matchup, who's going to be able to repair their equipment? Not Batman.
I think that the problem that you're running into with this is that I don't think is a fair match. Just because you're a billionaire and you can build tech doesn't make this different. The difference is like if you see Batman as an individual, let's take Iron Man versus Bruce Wayne. Okay. Let's take, instead of Iron Man, let's take Tony Stark. Okay. So Tony Stark versus Bruce Wayne. it's still Batman versus Iron Man. However, Bruce Wayne will kick him all over the street, down the block 100 times.
No
Dude,
way.
Tony Stark is just a nerdy little science guy in a metal suit
Batman's just a spoiled brat.
with an AI that he can tell him what to do. What happens when Cyborg shows up? He infects everything and shuts it all down. Anybody tech, done. Dead in the water because of Cyborg.
Iron Man, it's all completely independent. I mean, you've got Tony Stark. He can hold his own. He doesn't need the equipment. It's what does he call it? It's a prosthetic for him. That's what his equipment is.
Okay.
Tony Stark is a boss.
But essentially he's made robotics that are, responsive to his voice cues, like a language model, like our last episode. Okay. and this robot responds and does what he commands it to do. So he's got a really fancy, he's like, hey, Iron Man, what's the weather today? Hey, Iron Man. Thank you, Iron Man. Like, instead of Google.
Batman is a spoiled brat who left home, learned some karate, and has a really fast car.
His parents died. Be a little nicer.
So did Tony's.
Okay, so their backstories are pretty much copycats
They're
off
the
of each
same
other.
guys, honestly. I just think Iron Man has cooler stuff.
Fair
But
enough.
that's the matchup with Batman and Iron Man. From
Okay.
either side, that's the perfect matchup. I go with Iron Man every time.
Okay, so here's a question. A lot of people put Hulk against Superman. Okay, now I saw a couple different options because some more recent developments. So Hulk, it was created because of gamma rays, right?
Gamma radiation.
Gamma radiation. Okay, and similar in nature is another character by the name of Flash. Okay. And I was like, man, Hulk would just smash the Flash. Like it just, there's no chance. Okay. However, some of them said, so he I can't remember what they called it. Like, so Flash is so fast. Like
Now we'll get into it.
They're talking about Flash, that he can move faster, and shown in some of the cinematic reel that he's faster than Superman, which is faster than a speeding bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if he's faster than that, and they use the word phase. Okay. So phase meaning that he can phase, like whether that means to distort time and carry Hulk back to wherever you want him to go, or phase inside of Hulk and smash him from the inside out. So destroy him because of how fast you are. So that was that. Okay, this isn't me. I'm not making that argument.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just putting it out there that I was like, okay, that's an interesting angle. I can appreciate that. I still like. I'm with you on the sense that the Hulk can really cause some damage. Okay.
All right. So a couple things here. One, that's not how time travel works. Hulk is the one who said it. So that argument just out the window. Now, phasing. Okay, what they're talking about phasing to be able to phase into something else. Electrons move at such an extreme fast speed and have an electrical field. And so that's essentially what creates the solidity of objects is the electrons, because there's the amount
Sure.
of space that's actually there is massive. Mm-hmm. Because the gap between the actual nucleus and the electrons is relatively to the size of the atoms huge.
Okay.
And so what creates that is the electrons themselves. And so what they're saying with the Flash is that he can move faster than the electrons themselves and can fill the space in between those atoms. So his
That's
atomic
crazy.
particles
Come on.
can
That's
fill
crazy.
in. The problem here is if he is capable of moving faster than his own particles, as soon as he tries to phase, he basically commits suicide.
He just
He goes so fast that he just disintegrates into the base components of the atoms that he's going faster than.
Okay, but we can't talk about like the science as if science is a real thing.
Now
in DC, like,
that's exactly it. DC is so bad at science in order to make their characters work, but Marvel actually attempts to build science into it.
Hence the gamma radiation, right?
Right, exactly. And so you've got this difference. DC is just making stuff up, whereas Marvel still making stuff up, but more realistic making up.
Okay. So, Superman. That has always been, and there's movies, there's videos, there's comic books. Superman stomping Hulk all over the universe, everywhere, no matter where he goes. The big green giant. However, okay, so I'm going to say that just because that's just because that's what it's always been. They call him the Jade Beast, not the Kryptonite. But there is one reference, in all other scenarios, all other shows, all other cartoons, anything, Superman is the victor. Why? Because although Hulk has the strength that he has and the ability with gamma radiation to absorb any amount of strength thrown at him, Superman has a library of options that he can do that isn't just about energy expelled to destroy. So essentially, he can obliterate Hulk and tear him into tiny little pieces. But now that being said, and like I said, there are movies after movies after movies after cartoons after comics that do this. So in that sense, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna stay with the fact that Superman can win. But I'm gonna do this only because of the fact that I found it and I was like, oh, that's neat. That's a curveball. So this will plead your case. It's called Doomsday Clock is the name of the comic, number 12 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, DC Comics, Watchmen universe. Okay. And I can't think of the dude's name, but they were talking about, there's a quote in there that says, a green behemoth stronger than even Doomsday. So if that's a true statement, Doomsday beats Superman.
Mm-hmm.
It causes Doomsday's death in the process of beating Superman. But in that the Man of Steel is dead, Doomsday is dead, but the behemoth can kill Doomsday. So that's a credit and a nod saying, wow, there is something out there that is as strong, if not stronger, than Superman. That is the only thing that I was able to find. Everything else was like, dude, Superman spanks Hulk all over town. Like, that's it.
What does Hulk say about Loki? Puny god.
All right. One of my favorite scenes is when he grabs Loki and smacks him on the.
Yep.
That's my favorite. Just like a little kid's toy. It's a stuffed animal. Just whack, whack, whack. I just bust up laughing.
Love it.
All right. Well, obviously, we're just going to have to agree to disagree because, guys, I want to keep my job. Two, it all depends on, who you grew up. I think that's kind of a defining point is if you grew up with the core of this part of stuff, that's going to influence how you make your decisions about this stuff. Deep down inside, who are you a fanboy for? Are you a fan or fangirl? I don't want to exclude anybody here, but who are you a fan for? Are you a fan for Marvel comics or the Marvel universe or the whole entirety of it? Or are you, do you like the mysterious side of what DC can add to that? But ultimately, I think that talking about this with their capabilities, kind of just makes me enjoy the fact that, you know, like I had a pretty cool childhood with some cool superheroes to idolize. We all want to imagine that we have some of these abilities and, you know, can lift cars and throw trains and catch bullets and laser eyes and, you know, all the other cool, crazy things that you could imagine doing. And so, you know, this just kind of lets you disconnect from reality and negotiate who your, you know, who your superhuman strength might be if you know, put to the test. But
Yeah. And more than that, I'm just going to add a lot of these superheroes allow us to think about the things that we've been through. And so, like we were talking about Batman, Iron Man,
mm-hmm.
they both lost their parents, and yet they overcame and became literal superheroes. And you think about a child who's lost something like that. This is someone that they can relate to and realize, I don't have to be down on myself. There's something that I can accomplish. I can be great no matter what my background is.
Yeah.
You've got superheroes like Wonder Woman, like Captain America, who are so perfectly honest and true all the time.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that you don't have to be dishonest, that you don't have to try to sneak your way to be successful, but that you can be an honest and good person and become something great. Each one of these heroes, even the Hulk, he made a massive mistake while he was working on an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned that into something great for himself and for the world. You can overcome your mistakes. You can overcome what seems like a devastating mistake. All of these heroes have something that shows us as people that there is something that we can accomplish no matter where we come from, no matter what has happened to us. And that, I think, is really what makes these superheroes so valuable to us,
Mm-hmm.
both as children and as adults.
You know, I think that's a really, really good perspective to just kind of see this, you know, the valiant champions that they are. They're not untouchable. They all have a little bit of backstory about them that gives them some identity in what we are in our life and what we can do, and showing that they can be a victor in some way, shape, or form. Now, I would push back to say, like, man, Bruce Wayne is a giant therapy mess, but you know, so is Tony Stark, you know, so
but honestly, that's what happens. I mean, you lose family that young, you're going to kind of be a mess, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be successful.
And that's what I like, that, you know, these stories are not, they don't just succumb to the things that hit them and just kind of go like, well, that was the end of my, you know, success or anything like that. That's the end of my journey. You know, and honestly, like, even if you end up, you know, going to hell.
Wonderful transition. Love it.
Guys, hold on a sec. I need to clarify this. Earlier on, when I introduced this line, it was one hockey stick. You guys, I hope you get it. HEL is a city, or it's a town in Poland near Warsaw. And so apparently you can't take bus number 666 anymore because there was, I guess, a protest. The Christians didn't really like. So, you know, so there's a company, the company that runs the bus lines. It's called PKS, and I'm gonna murder this, but it's Gdynia, PKS Gdynia. So pressure from the local Christian groups in the town of Hell. They live there too. Near the Baltic coast in Poland. This is great. I love this. But anyway, protesters said the number signifying the devil on a bus, obviously, was the devil bus, headed to a little dark, or like headed to hell. A bus headed to hell, you know, was a little too dark and unchristian-like. So, you know, it's interesting. I think about this. There's a song that I enjoy. It's by a band in the 90s, Soul Coughing. and it's called The Bus to Beelzebub, or Get Onto the Bus That's Going to Take You Back to Beelzebub. So like this, just, I mean, the whole thing came back to me. That line was just, oh wow, guys, we're not talking about that hell. I'm sorry, it's not. And honestly, like, the fact that the company caved, they're already reconsidering it because it was such a big deal to catch the bus number 666 to go to hell.
I'd take that bus.
I wonder if, like, the whole way there, they're listening to AC/DC, Highway to Hell, or let's say you pack a lunch and you put that lunch in a basket. So did you say your lunch has gone to hell in a hand basket? I'm sorry.
Wow. Okay.
So
these dad jokes are getting bad.
Oh, come on. So anyways, so I believe, so all they did is they took the last number. And so from 666, they changed it to 669. But there are, I mean, that was maybe a month ago now. But since then, they've reconsidered this and been like, guys, get over this. Like, don't take that bus number. Take a different bus.
Yeah.
But you still need to go to hell. Okay. And we'll help you get there.
This makes me think of the Grand Tour, awesome TV show. They did a trip through Germany where they went to a few specific towns. These are real towns in Germany. They show the map on the episode. They go from wank to kissing to petting to f***ing and then to wedding.
You heard it here, guys. If you really want a good time,
Germany is apparently the place to go.
What was the name of the show?
The Grand Tour.
The Grand Tour. Okay.
This is Jeremy Clarkson's show.
Okay. I'm gonna have to check out the Grand Tour. I don't know if I'm gonna do that kind of. That sounds really. I'll probably end up doing this tour. It sounds like fun.
Well, so the Grand Tour is the TV show, and this was just one episode on it. But they just did this trip through Germany.
Yeah, you do like a pub crawl or like a progressive date sort of thing. You're like, well, that's really moving fast in my opinion. If you're hitting all these towns and that's moving fast on a progressive date even. Sorry,
now, honestly,
guys,
in my opinion, they should have gone to wedding first, but to each their own.
Yeah, nowadays, Joe, I don't know. Like most people, they don't even think it's too casual at this point. It's just
they don't even finish the journey.
It's like texting. It's just the same. There's nothing to it now. Hey, I think we've really just kind of torn apart the very end of this podcast.
We definitely went off the rails, and this podcast at the end kind of went to hell in a handbasket.
Hell in a handbasket. All right. Well, before we continue to do more damage, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening to us. And before we go, any parting words that you have to say, Joe?
Nothing for me.
All right. Well, I guess the only thing I can say is check your shoes.